The morning started with humiliation. A customer dropped a stack of used textbooks on the counter and told Daniel he must have the softest hands in Brooklyn because only soft hands would price college books so cheap. The man smirked while his girlfriend laughed and nudged him toward the door. Daniel forced a smile even though his cheeks stung. He walked to the back of the charity thrift store and hid among the shelves where the air smelled like paper dust and stale perfume. Volunteers were reorganizing donations after a busy weekend, and every shelf groaned under the weight of abandoned stories. He pushed a row of travel guides into place when one book refused to budge. Something thicker sat behind them. He pulled the whole row out. A large photo album with a padded cover lay wedged against the pegboard. It had no label and the edges felt stiff with age. For some reason it looked too deliberate, like someone meant to hide it. He carried it to the sorting table and flipped it open. Pictures of a family filled every page. A 4th of July barbecue on a narrow balcony somewhere in Queens. A toddler playing with a garden hose. A middle-aged man holding a birthday cake. The faces looked ordinary and warm but told Daniel nothing about why the album had been tucked away like contraband. When he reached the last pages, something slid out and tapped against the linoleum. It was a folded paper with 12 odd words in shaky handwriting. Behind it a paper wallet printed with a string of characters and a QR code. And behind that a wrinkled receipt from a major crypto exchange with a trade amount high enough to make him swallow hard. This was not the usual loose dollar bill left in a coat pocket. This was the kind of thing people lost sleep over. He called to his supervisor, but she waved him off and told him to clock out if he was already stalling. He closed the album around the documents and slipped it into his backpack. He told himself he was only keeping it safe for the night. But the train ride home felt heavier than any shift he had ever worked, and every time someone brushed past him on the platform, he grabbed his straps as if someone could see straight into the bag. He had no idea that the first setback was only hours away. By morning, he had reread the volunteer manual. It stated that all donations belonged to the charity once they entered the store. It also said volunteers must avoid personal gain. The rules had been clear when he signed them, but this situation felt like a trap designed to test his weakest parts. He spent an hour Googling the long string of characters on the paper wallet. When the blockchain viewer revealed a non-zero balance, Daniel felt a wave of dizziness. The coins had not moved for years. They were simply sitting there like a forgotten bank account. He needed clarity. He took the subway back to the store and asked his supervisor whether anything unusual was donated recently. She laughed and told him the only unusual thing was a toaster that smelled like fish. He almost told her about the album, but another volunteer interrupted with questions about a pricing gun, and the moment disappeared. During lunch break, he opened the album again. On the inside of the front cover, a crooked sticky note clung to the plastic. An address in Jackson Heights and a phone number written in the same shaky hand as the seed words. He had somehow missed it the night before. He debated calling. If the owner was alive, he would be returning something precious. If the owner was dead, he would be walking into a family mess. Also, he did not even know if he was allowed to contact donors. He paced the break room while the microwave hummed. 2 volunteers joked about him wearing a hole in the floor. He stepped outside onto the loading ramp where trucks dropped donations. He dialed the number with shaking fingers. It rang twice and clicked to voicemail. He froze and hung up before the beep. His heart hammered. He tried again, and this time someone answered. A tired woman picked up and told him she no longer lived in Jackson Heights, but her brother had lived there. Daniel asked if her brother ever owned a photo album with a padded cover. The line went silent for a long beat. She finally said that her brother had died last year and that she had thrown away a bunch of his things without checking every page. Daniel said he found something inside the album that looked important. The woman asked what kind of important. He stalled. She insisted he come talk in person. He felt the first real knot of fear in his stomach. He had wanted clarity. Instead, he now had to deal with a stranger who sounded both suspicious and exhausted. He headed toward the train again, clutching the album under his arm, with no idea how heavy the next door would be when he knocked on it. He arrived at a brick building with cracked steps and kids' bicycles chained to the railing. The elevator was broken. He climbed 5 flights of stairs carrying the album in both hands. The woman opened the door halfway and studied him like she was gauging whether to slam it shut. Her name was Rosa. Her apartment smelled of bleach and rice and had a photo of a young man hanging above the couch. The man in the picture looked like the one holding a sparkler in the album. Daniel placed the album on her small kitchen table and removed the folded paper, the paper wallet, and the receipt. He explained everything in plain terms that made him sound like a nervous teacher giving a rushed lesson. Rosa pressed her fingertips against her temples. She said her brother had once bragged about buying crypto but later claimed he had lost everything. She had assumed he sold it at a loss. Daniel told her the coins were still there. She went silent in a way that made the small kitchen feel too full. They spent the next half hour calling the exchange listed on the receipt. They got nowhere. Support staff only repeated that account access required proper credentials. Rosa explained that her brother had died. The staff repeated the same statements with the same robotic calm. Finally, Rosa pulled a folder from a drawer containing his death certificate and some unpaid bills. She said she was his only sibling and next of kin. Daniel said the seed words might be enough to move the coins without dealing with the exchange at all. But he warned that he did not know if that was legally safe. They sat together flipping through the album again, hoping for another clue. One page had a picture of Roberto sitting at a desk with a laptop open and a scribbled note behind him on the wall that read "First Buy." The coincidence gave both of them a chill. The coins felt more real with each new detail. Rosa asked what Daniel wanted in return. He said he had not thought that far. She narrowed her eyes as if deciding whether to trust him. She said she needed expert guidance before touching anything. Daniel agreed. If they did this wrong, they could both end up answering hard questions to people who had the legal authority to ruin their lives. But they had no idea yet how long that path would turn out to be. Rosa called a legal aid clinic she had worked with during a landlord dispute. A paralegal agreed to meet them the next morning. They arrived at a modest office above a grocery store in Elmhurst. A ceiling fan clacked above their heads. The paralegal listened to the story while taking notes. He said digital property laws were messy, but in many states crypto was treated like any other asset. If Daniel had not purchased the album and had not tried to profit from it, he was not violating anything by reporting it to the family. Rosa, as next of kin, likely had the strongest claim. But he also warned them that touching the funds without proper documentation might raise questions if anyone ever disputed ownership. Rosa frowned at the idea of fighting banks or government agencies. She worked 2 cleaning jobs and barely kept her head above water. She had no time for bureaucratic mazes. The paralegal called a tax attorney he knew who specialized in digital assets. She agreed to a short consultation later that afternoon. Her office sat above a pet grooming salon where dryers roared nonstop. She wore a navy suit and spoke with a brisk clarity that discouraged nonsense. She laid out their situation with clinical precision. The seed words were effectively a key. Whoever held them controlled the coins. But controlling the coins did not erase inheritance laws. If they transferred anything, they needed proof that the transfer went to the proper heir. The attorney stated plainly that Rosa was the rightful heir as long as no will named anyone else. She said Daniel had acted responsibly by not using the seed phrase for himself. She also said he deserved recognition for returning the album. But any agreement between them had to be written and signed to avoid future misunderstandings. Rosa asked what steps were next. The attorney advised creating a fresh wallet in Rosa's name on a clean device and moving the funds there while documenting every step. She warned them again that taxes would come into play once the coins became liquid assets. Rosa grimaced. Daniel did too. The attorney took out a blank sheet and wrote instructions in large block letters. She told Rosa to buy a cheap smartphone in cash, set it up without linking personal accounts, and generate a new wallet with a new seed phrase written clearly on paper. Rosa followed the list with nervous precision. Daniel entered the old seed phrase on his laptop one last time. The wallet opened and the balance stared back like a ghost from someone else's life. He typed Rosa's new wallet address into the send field. They all watched the screen as he pressed the button. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the pending status appeared. The attorney refreshed a blockchain explorer on her computer. The new wallet showed the incoming transaction. Rosa breathed out so hard she almost doubled over. The attorney nodded and said it was done. Daniel felt an almost painful release of tension. Rosa hugged the album to her chest. She said she would never understand why her brother hid the seed words in the one thing she had been willing to donate without checking. Daniel said life was full of strange moments where the smallest choice turned into a cliff edge. But the day was not over yet. The attorney advised them to return to her office in a week with Rosa's updated documents. Rosa insisted on giving Daniel a written agreement before they left. She pulled out a fresh envelope and counted bills slowly. She said 10% was fair because without him finding the album everything would have vanished into the donation bin forever. Daniel opened his mouth to protest. She raised a hand to stop him. She said the money represented her brother's last act of luck and that it should benefit both of them. They walked to a notary office 2 blocks away and had the agreement stamped. Over the next week, Rosa worked with the attorney to file basic inheritance paperwork for the digital asset. She produced Roberto's death certificate and rent records. The attorney prepared a statement describing the accidental donation and Daniel's role in returning the property. Everything went into a small folder that made the situation official enough to satisfy future questions. Daniel notified his supervisor at the thrift store that he had recovered a personal item belonging to a family and had returned it. She seemed relieved and thanked him for his integrity. Then she complained about a truck delay and hurried away. The thrift store director later received a donation in memory of Roberto. It was not enormous but enough to fund extra food vouchers for a month. She mentioned it in a meeting without naming Daniel or Rosa. During this time, Daniel kept sorting books and pricing mugs like nothing in his life had shifted. But each night he checked the envelope Rosa had given him. He planned to put most of it into savings and use the rest to pay down the last of his debts. It felt unreal to consider a future where emergencies did not wreck him. A week later, Rosa texted him a picture of a lease approval letter. She said the funds gave her a shot at moving her kids into a place with more space and less mold. She said Roberto would have teased her for crying, but she cried anyway. Daniel felt the weight of the album even though it no longer sat in his hands. He thought of all the items people donated without checking pockets or pages. All the hidden pieces of lives slipping through gaps in shelves. He wondered how many small fortunes or small heartbreaks had already passed through the store unnoticed. He did not expect the next twist to hit so soon. One morning, the director approached him and asked if he would train new volunteers in handling sensitive items. She said he had a good sense for when something mattered. She asked if he wanted a part-time paid role. Daniel blinked at her words. For the first time in months, he felt the ground tilt in his favor. He accepted the part-time offer. It did not make him rich, but it made him stable. He liked training new volunteers. He told them to check every inside pocket, every zipper, every page before sending anything to the floor. He told them that most things people leave behind are ordinary, but sometimes a detail matters more than it seems. Rosa moved into her new apartment in East Elmhurst. She sent him a picture of her kids painting their bedroom walls. She wrote that she wished Roberto could see it. Daniel replied that maybe the memory of him was enough. He still walked past the bookshelf where he had found the album. The pegboard still bent in the middle the same way it had that day. Sometimes he pressed a hand against the space where the album had rested as if some trace of that moment remained. He never told new volunteers the story because he did not want them hunting for treasure. He wanted them looking for people. The envelope Rosa gave him allowed him to clear his card debt and start saving for the first time since leaving home. He did not brag about it. He simply slept better. On quiet evenings, he sat on the store's loading ramp watching traffic pass on Flushing Avenue. He thought about the twist of fate that had placed the album behind those travel guides. He thought about how close he came to walking away from the store that day. He understood now that doing the right thing never made headlines. It did not make anyone fearless. It just made the path ahead a little cleaner. It let him look at his own reflection without flinching. When customers asked why he liked volunteering at a thrift store, he always said the same thing. You never know what people leave behind, and sometimes returning the right thing to the right person is worth more than keeping it for yourself. He never mentioned the album. That belonged to one family and to a single moment in his life when a forgotten object pushed him toward the kind of man he wanted to be.